The Germans face a double bind. First, they have a lot more components that come from over the horizon, places that they cannot deal with, places where they don't have the capacity to enforce any sort of freedom of the seas or market access. The second problem is just as bad. The demographic situation of Europe in general, and Germany in the specific, is awful. They have to sell beyond the horizon as well. So everything about that engineering model will fail in the next few years. But it's nothing compared to the situation that the Chinese face. The Chinese are the most dependent of the major powers on foreign technology, foreign components, everything pretty much but the capital. Now, a lot of you have heard about the Made in China 2025 program, the idea that the Chinese are aiming to have technological equivalence with the Western world in just 5 years. Yeah, that's not what it means. If you can to a Chinese bureaucrat behind closed doors where their boss can't hear them, they will readily admit that 2025 is just the first step of a very long program, and that they don't actually expect to see technological equivalence until 2070. They don't have that kind of time, even if everything went perfectly. If you're looking for the country that is going to be the partner for the United States moving forward, it's not in Europe, and it's certainly not in Asia. We need to look a little closer to home. This is a climate map of the United States. That tan area in the middle, that is the temperate zone climate, makes up the bulk of the greater Midwest system, single largest chunk of arable land in the world. In addition, you've got that river system overlaying it, which drops the cost of transport through the floor. Floating things is about 1/12 the cost of moving them by truck. In addition, we've lakes to the north, forests to the north, mountains to the south, deserts to the south, oceans on both sides. We are the most insulated chunk of high quality land in the world. American success does not require decent leadership. I think we've learned that lesson over and over and over the last 30 years. It's the perfect, but compare it to Mexico. Northern Mexico is all desert, southern Mexico is all tropics, the middle is on an uplift that's about a vertical mile up. Infrastructure development in this sort of area is very difficult. Now, there's pros and cons to this system. It's laughable to think that the Mexicans can grow all their own food, particularly the closest to the US border you get where it's highland desert. It also means you got these population clusters that are very tight, no hinterland, because there's not a lot of agriculture. So you get an individual dude, a jefe, if you will, who kind of dominates everything in each individual urban center, especially once you get outside of the Mexican city core. Which means that if you're in a northern Mexican border city, or really anywhere north of the Central Plateau, you're on your own. And you have to reach out to find partners, and pretty much all of them reach north to Americans because we have the capital and the markets and the transport system. And that makes Mexico very, very different compared to the rest of Latin America. This is the trade portfolio of Peru. Everything on the right side indicates where the products go, and everything on the left side indicates what the products are by value. Those arrows are pointing to the value-added sections, mostly manufacturing. Peru is a standard Latin American country. A lot of low value-added products, a lot of ores, a little bit of agriculture, and that's about it. And most of it goes to China because China is a developing country, and it's ravenously bubbling up whatever resources it can in order to build out its physical infrastructure and industrial plant. This is the role of most of Latin America. Here's Mexico. Wildly different. Mexico has all kinds of stuff going for it. Lots of value added because they're integrated into American supply chains. And collectively, this makes Mexico not only more wealthy than Central America as a whole, but far more advanced technologically. It's an upwardly mobile country, and Americans enjoy privileged access to it. I'm going to leave you with a couple of series of thoughts. First of all, I'm actually a little worried about inflation right now. We've got a $1.9 trillion stimulus package. We've got a rapid reindustrialization. We've got rapid integration with the Mexicans. We have rapid manufacturing expansion as a result of COVID. And now we're about to have a massive COVID recovery. At the same time, people are also shuffling around and changing their living styles. All of this generates demand. We haven't seen this sort of inflationary impulse since at least the early 80s. Now, I don't think it's going to kill us, and all the things that we're doing are all things that we need to do, but doing them all at the same time is going to generate the greatest surge of inflation that we've seen in at least 40 years. That is going to have some implications politically down the road, and not all that far, like talking around like New Year's. Second, things are getting really interesting with the Russians. Now that the president is down on public record calling Putin a killer, because you know he is, we are now pretty much diametrically opposed with the Russians on absolutely everything. But unlike last time around, we don't have a lot of us at stake. Relationships with the Europeans are falling. We'll talk about that here in a second. The SolarWinds hack got really ugly, and now we have the American president publicly announcing that a massive counter campaign in terms of cyber is imminent. It's kind of a weird thing to announce publicly if you ask me, but I'm really interested to see how this is going to turn out. Anyway, relations have collapsed in every possible measure, which means that, and since we don't have an interest in maintaining stability in Russian relations anymore, we can use a lot of tools that we haven't used in the past. So we can, for example, target energy exports from the Russians, not caring what the impact on the Europeans happens to be. I expect that to get really interesting in just a couple of months. Third, Persian Gulf. It's an energy question. Now, there is a lot of criticism of the Obama administration's deal with the Iranians. I broadly mirror a lot of those concerns. And the team that is in charge of Biden's foreign policy, it was actually their idea back during the Obama administration to have this deal. But then the Obama team took it and ran with it and kind of punted it. So they fully realize what went wrong and why. And they also can acknowledge publicly that the Trump administration's maximum pressure campaign had the desired effect. It absolutely smashed the Iranian economy. So they want a new deal, but they don't want a deal that doesn't reflect these changes. So it's going to be a lot more strict if it happens. The Iranians, of course, want the old deal back, and they've been trying to get America's attention and trying to generate chips that they can trade. Because without those oil sales that the Trump administration has prevented, Iran has lost the capacity to manipulate the region in the way that it prefers. A lot of the militia groups that they've sponsored in Lebanon and Syria and Iraq only do what they're told when the Iranians pay them, and right now the Iranians can't pay them. So the Iranians are looking for other leverage. Around New Year's, they hijacked a South Korean chemicals tanker in order to get the Americans' attention. The Trump administration did nothing, but then the Biden administration came in and did nothing. We don't care. Shale revolution has made the United States completely agnostic on global energy policy, which means if you're Iran, you have to up your game. US probably still isn't going to care. But we now have the Americans likely to throw energy sanctions on the Russians. At the same time, the Iranians are likely to up their game in the Gulf. That's a perfect storm for global energy policy. It just doesn't affect the US. Everyone else, though.